What's up everyone, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for another episode of Ranked, the series where I take an artist or a band's discography and rank in my own personal opinion from worst to best every studio album, and the minimum amount required in order for me to do an episode is 5 albums, and guess what? The Kentucky-based rock band Cage the Elephant just released their 5th album, Social Cues, in 2019, so now is the perfect time for a Ranked episode. Their music combines elements of alternative rock, punk, maybe a little bit of grunge, a little bit of garage rock, and some desert stoner rock in there as well. Some nice psychedelic-leaning tracks from time to time. I like what they bring to the table. I've been a fan since roughly 2009, a decade with Cage the Elephant, but how do their albums stack up? With 5 of them, this of course is going to be my opinions. I would love to know how you would rank them. Let me know in the comments section down below. Join the conversation. I'll try and reply to as many comments as I can. While you're here, please leave a like on this video. A like goes a long way, so if you find yourself enjoying it, then that's a great way to show support for the channel. Subscribe for the love of music, and here is my number 5 pick.
Got so much to lose. Got so much to prove. God, don't let me lose my mind. Trouble on my left, trouble on my right.
Coming off of the electrifying Melophobia, a large part of me was expecting greatness for their 4th record, but instead, we got what is easily for me their worst album to date. They tried their best to do the 60s and 70s influence as well, but the record starts splitting apart at the seams when you really sit down and pay attention. I respect that Matt Schultz and the band were inspired by the likes of David Bowie and didn't want the record to be tied to one consistent sound, but Tell Me I'm Pretty feels less like an adventure and more like an unpleasant chore to sift through. The 2 big singles are wildly different when propped up against one another, with Mess Around being an off-brand Black Keys tune performed by Cage the Elephant, and Trouble being one of the band's best songs to date. That's what makes it so tough to boil down, because for every rollicking romp like Crybaby or Cold Cold Cold, there's a Punchin' Bag or Sweetie Little Jean that feel nothing more than simple-minded nods to the music that they love, except far more inferior. My cold-shouldered feelings towards this project might not be a popular opinion, but I don't need for it to be in order for me to truly know how I feel about the album. At the end of the day, I'm sure even most Cage the Elephant fans can admit to themselves that this isn't their strongest outing and is nowhere close to being their best record.
In my past, bittersweet, found no love between the sheets, tasted blood, broken dreams, lonely times indeed, with eyes cast down, fixed upon the ground, with eyes cast down.
It's a bit startling when you realize that Thank You Happy Birthday is technically Cage the Elephant's most successful album on the charts. It hit number 2 on the Billboard album chart in January 2011, but then again, January is a bit of a dead zone for album releases, so less competition equals bigger chance of debuting high. Realistically, this is actually their least successful album, and I'll tell you why I say that. Cage have historically dominated the alternative songs chart, bolstering a large amount of singles to the number 1 spot there. Shake Me Down was the big hit, but unlike their other records, that was the only chart topper they scored from Birthday. You're probably thinking I'm about to stick a knife into this album's back, but realistically, I actually like a good amount of songs on here. I mean, they're kind of a rowdy, unkempt bunch, but that's part of the charm, isn't it? And they might be a little bit rough around the edges, but they do clean up nice. If only some of the arrows that they had shot flew a bit straighter and more consistent. I mean, this is landing at number 4, but this is definitely way better than Tell Me I'm Pretty. Years after the release of this album, lead singer Matt Schultz himself admitted in an interview with Alternative Nation that too little of his own personality made the cut for the record, but instead we were introduced to a character that he had built up on the self-titled album and later let rule the house on Thank You Happy Birthday. Character acting actually didn't go over as poorly as he may think retroactively. I dig the too cool for school snark he hands us, with indie kids being the perfect representation of a punk attitude and a psychedelic musical atmosphere. Things can be a bit unbearable here and there, but there's a good crop of scrappy fighters like the hook-fueled Aberdeen that sounds bright but is actually dark right before my eyes, and the chaotic Sell Yourself getting the job done. Revisit this one if you haven't played it in a while. It'll probably surprise you with just how well some of them actually hold up. It's not even close to being their best, but it wasn't as bad of a follow-up to the self-titled as some people would make it out to be.
Now the Generation X is somehow slipped into the cracks. Oh, they love to see me fall, but I'm already on my best, so it goes to one ear, right
Cage the Elephant. What a weird name to hear for the very first time, but that's what happened when I discovered this band shortly after the release of their debut self-titled album in 2008. Ain't No Rest for the Wicked is the song that blew the band up to epic proportions, but ironically enough, it's one of their only singles that didn't top the alternative charts, stalling out at number 3. Numbers aren't at all important at the end of the day though, and what really mattered to most music fans such as myself was this young rock band's ability to tell a story in a captivating way that made the listener feel like a part of their world. The sheepish desert-tinged guitars made us listen up, and they delivered even further with a confrontational and loud album. I downloaded the full record in the summer of 2009, and it was definitely a big part of shaping my musical tastes going into the next decade. Each band member brings a strong sense of personality and passion to their instrument, with the lead guitar and drumming being the perfect backbone to Schultz's vocal antics. For whatever reason, I tend to overlook some of the awesome deep cuts on the back half, but that's a bad habit I'm putting an end to right here, right now. For sure, the first half slaps. In One Ear shoots a flamethrower right at us, no one's denying that, but Backstabbin' Betty is so overlooked and tells a twisted little tale. Back Against the Wall is a superb single that's among their greatest songs, and you'll find a surprising amount of fun packed into tracks like Soil to the Sun. We've had plenty of years to absorb it properly, and the self-titled album is more than worthy of your attention, more than a decade removed. Cage the Elephant were officially born, and that right there is reason enough for me to sit down and not complain, because they're one of my favorite rock bands of the 2010s. The constant need for conflict in life in order to find inspiration to write is why the term the tortured artist exists in the first place. I hate that it works that way, but a musician often writes their best material when facing the bullets of grief or tragedy. Matt Schultz channeled the grieving process of letting someone go via divorce into the DNA of these 12 songs, making for their most vulnerable album to date. That's not to say that every nook and cranny is sad and directly about his split, it's just more so a looming feeling that we always know is in the back of his head. Broken Boy jumpstarts the listening experience by just being a total fucking banger, packing in some fantastic guitar moments and highlighting Schultz in his peak vocal form. House of Glass was the second single and simultaneously indicated how killer this album was gonna be. The chaotic drum hits, the manic vocal delivery, the tense fast pace that keeps you singing along and on the edge of your seat at the same time. Yeah, I'm totally sold, but that's not to downplay Ready to Let Go, since it's another one of my favorite Cage songs. It did a spectacular job at being the lead single that featured both unreal catchiness, but also had a deep sense of sorrow. When you really give this album a proper chance, you'll see the heart and creative playing that went into making a more focused sound for the band overall. It's a record that I feel stands very tall, it's definitely a gem in their discography. I hope that you guys will go check it out if you've yet to hear it, and I have no problem calling this their best record since Melophobia, which we haven't seen that on the list yet. Where the hell is Melophobia?
Am I losing my mind here? 'Cause I can tell I've been waiting for answers for way too long. Seems I'm always waiting around. Fighters in my head, fighters in my mind.
Psychedelic mind tripping throws itself all over us like a warm dip in the ocean on Cage's blooming masterpiece, Melophobia. The members feel so in sync, the out-of-bounds atypical gambles pay off big, and the sense of wonder we're left with feels intimate but expansive at the same time. Alright, I fucking love this record, and I would tackle any dirtbag that would dare speak down on its name. At least I'm self-aware. There's 3 key tracks I can point to that explain what this album does well, and why their weirdness shines brighter than a diamond in the sun. It's Just Forever brings on Alison Mosshart of Dead Weather and the Kills fame for a distraught rollick with Destiny. Spiderhead spearheads the campaign with jangly keys, unmistakable vocals topped off with a hell of a finale, and finally Hypocrite seals the deal with a distinct brand of off-kilter drumming, plus some trombones and the like, combined with a vivid imagination lyrically. I suppose that last point is really what keeps this album moving like clockwork. Cage have an active imagination, and Matt pours so much of his own personality into these 10 tracks that it's hard not to adore them. Perhaps it's not technically flawless or among the best albums of all time, but for rock in the 21st century, Melophobia carries a torch that's refused to burn out since it was handed off to the world in the fall of 2013. The term Melophobia might translate to the fear of music, but the band set their worries aside for this one and crafted an album that has something for every kind of Cage the Elephant fan. From worst to best, that is how how I rank the Cage the Elephant studio albums. Let me know how you would rank all 5 in the comment section down below, along with any thoughts that you might have on my commentary on any of the records. Obviously, I'm sure plenty will disagree, and many might agree as well, but I would welcome any discussion. Just be nice to each other, be civil, don't tear each other limb from limb just because you don't agree. There's an annotation over in the corner of the screen if you want to go directly to my Patreon page, or just hit the top link in the description. All of my socials can be found down there as well. If you would like to see my top 10 favorite Cage the Elephant tracks, then tap right here, or tap over here for the last episode of Ranked. Other than that, I got nothing else for you today. I will see you very soon right here on ARTV.